Hey everyone, Poindexter here, and in this video we begin a playthrough of the much anticipated solitaire air combat wargame, Western Front Ace, published by Compass Games and designed by Gregory Smith and Ian Cooper. This game has you flying as a scout pilot in World War I. The game mechanics are very similar to Greg Smith's other air combat games, such as Interceptor Ace Volumes 1 and 2, Night Fighter Ace, and Silent Victory, a Pacific War submarine game. These games task the player with scoring as many victories and points as possible while surviving a full campaign. Doing so successfully requires making good choices, but also taking risks. While the games play rather quickly, they do a great job of building a narrative around your character, like most good solitaire systems do. The game covers the last 2 years of the war, beginning in September 1916. At first glance, you'll notice that the game is hefty for a solo game, both for the content and the weight of the box itself. This is because there are a great number of aircraft in the game to fly and fight against. World War I aircraft from all the Western powers that fought in the Great War are here. Britain, France, Germany, Austria-Hungary, Italy, and Belgium. But the numerous choices of aircraft and nations to fly from doesn't make for an overly complex game. In fact, you'll only be using a small portion of the available aircraft at any one time. If you have played any of Gregory Smith's games, you'll find Western Front Ace's gameplay quite familiar. You move your aircraft around the map, roll dice for encounters along the way, engage in combat if necessary, and then return to your home base. In comparison to Greg Smith's other air combat games, such as Interceptor Ace, Western Front Ace can be downright brutal. In this game, when you are shot down or your aircraft is destroyed, the game is over. Historically, only until very late in the war, there was no way for a pilot to escape from his stricken aircraft and survive. Parachutes were not utilized, so a pilot was forced to ride his crate all the way to the ground, which meant almost certain death. The game also comes equipped with a sequence of play card deck composed of 6 cards, a very useful aid which we'll be utilizing. These cards take you through the game step by step and are a great resource if you're new to these types of games. We'll begin our playthrough at the very start, in September 1916. Our pilot will be flying with the German Air Service. Utilizing the cards in the sequence of play deck, the first card tells us that we can either roll for our starting aircraft and base, or we can simply choose. We'll incorporate some randomization into some of these choices, which will also showcase some of the optional player charts. These charts are completely optional, and they don't affect the gameplay, but they do add a bit of role-playing and context, fleshing out your pilot and making the experience more immersive. The first thing we need to do is name our pilot, and we have a chart for that. The S2 chart contains a list of random German names. We simply roll 2 d6 die for the first name, and do the same for the last. And our pilot's name will be Josef Bonkarts. Of course, you are free to name your pilot whatever you wish. Next, we'll roll on the S3 Squadron Assignment chart to determine which Yasta we'll be flying with. As we've already declared September 1916 as our starting date, we simply roll a d6 die and refer to this row here. Otherwise, we could randomly determine the starting date by rolling 3 d10 dice on this column here. We roll a 1. Which means we'll be flying with Yasta 5. The letter P indicates Prussia, one of the German states present at this time. When flying as a German pilot, the player chooses the birthplace of his character, which affects the receipt of certain awards. So, our pilot, Josef Bongartz, will be of Prussian descent. The colored box also determines the sector in which this particular Jasta will be located. In this case, it's the Verdun sector. There are 2 German bases attached to the Verdun sector, so we'll choose to fly from Maas-Schaubühl. As you can imply by the name, this base is in the French sector of the front, so our Jasta will be fighting French aircraft. As stated at the top of the chart, the German Air Service could fly any aircraft available at the time, unlike the Allies. Since we're allowed to choose any starting aircraft we wish, Josef Bongartz will fly the Albatros D-1. This Albatros has strong firepower in the form of twin machine guns. It's also fairly agile and has a speed of 10. The D-1 is also sturdy and can take a bit more punishment than other scouts. We place our aircraft marker in the hangar space and markers indicating our airfield and the French airfield that is opposite ours. In our case, there are 2 French bases connected to ours. We arm our scout with the appropriate ammo markers, and we place 6 points worth of ammo on our Albatros, indicating the number of times we can fire during the mission. There are wingman spaces in the lower right corner of the aircraft display, but at this point in our career, we don't have one yet. In essence, we are the wingman, but as we gain victories, experience, and promotions, we'll be able to utilize one in the future. We also place a good luck charm for the appropriate nationality in one of the random event boxes. Every pilot receives one of these charms at the start of the game. The good luck charm allows the player to re-roll any dice or draw a new card from the deck instead of using the card just drawn. As stated earlier, air combat in World War I was harsh, so this talisman will help keep our pilot alive a little longer. We also place major ground offensive markers on the operations map. In September 1916, 2 major offensives are in operation, the Somme and Verdun. Since the Verdun offensive is in our area of operations, we may be called upon to perform ground attack missions in this sector. Referencing the 3 asterisks on the mission assignment chart, if we roll a 7, a ground attack mission will be flown instead of the one indicated on the chart. Players also start with the Reflexes skill and Advanced Maneuver 1, which is the Cuban 8. These are in addition to the standard free maneuvers, tight turn, barrel roll, and dive. The standard maneuvers have unlimited use, unlike advanced maneuvers, which can only be used once per mission. Along with our good luck charm, the advanced maneuver and free reflex skill will increase our pilot's chances of survival. Now that we've completed our setup, it's time to go to flight school. Flight school gives us a chance to earn benefits that we can use towards purchasing skills, or, if we're fortunate, skills we can immediately use. At the top of the F3 flight school chart is the training section. We perform all 3 training segments: gunnery, flight, and landing. Gunnery instructions indicate we flip 3 combat cards and reference the 2 firepower column. If any one of the cards has a 4, 5, or destroyed, we receive a gunnery -1 token, which means the gunnery skill will cost 1 less experience point to purchase. Gunnery causes our pilot to score 1 extra random hit if any hits are scored, and normally costs 4 experience points. We draw the first combat card, and a 2 is shown in the 2 firepower column. We draw our second card, and it's another 2. No luck so far. We draw our last card. It's a 5, and we manage to gain the gunnery -1 token on the last card draw. We place the token on the A2 pilot status chart as a reminder. Next up is flight training. In this segment, we simply roll 2 d6 dice. If we roll a 9 or higher, we gain the ACM-1 token, meaning it will cost 1 less experience point to purchase the ACM skill. ACM is short for Air Combat Maneuvering. Acquiring this skill means our scout takes 1 less random hit when attacked, and normally costs 3 experience points. We roll for the result, and it's a 10, and we receive the ACM-1 token, placing it on the pilot status chart as well. So far so good, as we proceed to the last flight training segment, which is landing. We roll 3 times on the B7 landing chart, adding a +2 modifier since we are in training. If none of the rolls are a rough landing result, we receive the landing skill for free. We roll for our first landing, and it's over before we've begun, rolling a 12, which is increased to 14 and a rough landing. As a result, we don't receive the landing skill. Our flight training is complete, and now we get to choose what to do in our spare time activities. The player is free to choose one of 3 options. Extra physical training gives the player a stamina marker, which is used if your pilot is killed in action or receives a serious wound. Stamina downgrades the KIA status to a serious wound. If your pilot suffers a serious wound instead, it is downgraded to a light wound. The marker is discarded after use. The second choice is extra study time. This choice gives the player an extra experience point, useful if you wish to jumpstart purchasing skills. The final choice is extra carousing. Choosing this option gives the player 1 prestige point and a +1 modifier to his promotion dice roll. We'll choose extra study time for our pilot and gain an extra experience point. With that, Second Lieutenant Joseph Bongartz completes flight school and automatically receives 1 experience point. Since we chose extra study time in our spare time, we gain another experience point for a total of 2. With 2 experience points, we have several choices we could make. Precision, leadership, weapons maintenance, and landing all cost 1 point. Mechanically inclined costs 2 points and increases the speed of our aircraft by a factor of 1. We could also spend 2 points to purchase Advanced Maneuver 2, which is the Chandelle. This maneuver avoids 3 random hits and improves our final dogfight position by 1. Thanks to our successful training, we have the ACM-1 token, which makes air combat maneuvering available to us for 2 experience points instead of 3, another tempting choice. However, we're going to forego all of these and save our points for Sixth Sense. This skill negates any destroyed outcome against us and reduces that result to 2 random hits instead. Since any outright destruction of our aircraft means instant death, we'll wait to gain 1 more experience point to purchase this powerful skill. Until then, we'll rely on our lucky charm to get us through. Now it's time to start our career. We've already placed our major ground offensive markers, so we'll roll for the number of contact patrols we'll be performing this month. This is done by simply rolling a d6 dice. We roll a 5, so our pilot will be flying 5 patrols during the month of September. Next, we roll on the A1A chart for the Central Powers to start our first mission. It's a 7, which would normally be a defensive patrol, but since a major ground offensive is happening at Verdun, the mission is changed to ground attack in support of the troops. A ground attack is a special mission which involves flying to no man's land and conducting strafing runs on enemy ground troops. Executing the mission is straightforward. We fly to the no man's land sector, and expend 2 ammo points. There is no need to track any damage to ground troops, as the strafing is automatic. However, we will have to deal with anti-aircraft fire before and after the attack, which can be quite dangerous. If the mission is a success, we receive credit for 2 sorties instead of 1 for the purpose of experience point gain. But we cannot turn back before reaching no man's land, or the mission is considered a failure. Let's hope we don't run into enemy scouts along the way. The mission begins, and we move to the takeoff box, also moving the endurance marker to the takeoff space. Next, we roll for a possible encounter in the takeoff box on the A3 encounter chart under the friendly lines column. It's a 5, and unfortunately, we run into a French scout. We roll on the 1916 French fighters column to determine what type we'll be going up against. We roll a 4, a Newport 23. Next, we roll on the B1 starting orientation chart. We roll a 5, and we start combat advantaged over our French opponent. We place the aircraft markers in the orientation box, like so. We can now decide to engage this scout or attempt to break off. Since we have an advantage over the Newport, we'll engage in combat. We place the Newport 23 aircraft mat nearby, as we'll be using it to record any damage we cause, also adding the appropriate ammo markers for the French scout. The Newport 23 has the same agility as our Albatross, but is slightly faster with a speed of 11. It also has a firepower of 3, where our Albatross has 4. The Newport is not as durable as the Albatross, so it won't take as many hits to bring it down, assuming we score any hits. To increase our chances of shooting down this Newport, we'll use our reflexes skill to get in a first shot before he can react. Pilot Bongartz opens fire on the Frenchman and scores 5 hits. We roll 2 d6 dice for each hit on the B6 fighter damage chart and apply any damage. Unfortunately, it's not the result we hoped for. 2 hits strike the canvas, which have no effect, with the remaining 3 striking both struts and the landing gear. Not enough hits to cripple this machine. The wounded Newport automatically goes defensive as he is disadvantaged, and we draw a combat card to see what type of maneuver he pulls off. He attempts a barrel roll, but thanks to our reflexes, the hit avoidance indicated does not apply, so his maneuver has no effect. We've reached the end of combat and must now roll for initiative. To do this, we roll 1 die for each aircraft, adding speed, agility, and other factors that could affect the final number. The Newport has a speed of 11 and an agility of 2 for a final total of 13. Our Albatross has a speed of 10 and an agility of 2 for a final total of 12. We roll 1 die for each aircraft, and the Newport rolls a 2 and we roll a 5, which results in a 15 for the Newport and 17 for our Albatross, a difference of 2 in our favor. Referring to the initiative chart, a difference of 2 causes no change in position, and Joseph Bongartz still has the advantage over the Newport. We could attempt to break away and continue our mission, but we'll go another round of combat since we have the advantage. With our reflexes skill used up, the Newport will be able to go defensive without penalty. Second Lieutenant Bongartz fires, and we score 5 hits on the French scout. But he performs a side loop, which improves his position by 2, since the Newport 23 has a rotary engine. We'll apply the hits first, and the Newport's starboard struts are riddled with gunfire. Despite the Newport gaining the advantage with the side loop, the starboard wing collapses due to the damage, and the French scout falls to the ground. It is Joseph Bongartz's first victory. Bongartz moves to the next sector in friendly territory, and we move the endurance marker one space to the right. We roll for a possible encounter, and we roll a 12. Normally, this would mean an encounter of several enemy aircraft, but since this is the first 12 rolled in this sortie, it becomes a random event. We roll 2 d6 die on the C1 random events chart. It's a 9, and we've come up against a historical ace pilot. This is not good. First, we randomly determine which ace we'll be going up against. There are 3 French aces to choose from. After a random die roll, our pilot will be going up against René Fonck. The ace card states that Fonck's preferred aircraft is a SPAD 13. However, that scout is not available until 1917, so we'll choose the most advanced SPAD that is currently available, which is the SPAD 7. Historical ace pilots also use their inherent skills and start with advanced maneuvers 1, 2, and 3. The SPAD 7 is slightly faster than our Albatross, but less maneuverable. It has a firepower of 3, which is weaker than ours. However, SPADs are sturdy aircraft and can take more punishment than our Albatross. Now, we roll on the starting orientation chart, and let's hope for a good result. We roll a 6, a head-on result. This isn't a very favorable position, so we can attempt to disengage from this encounter by rolling a 1 or 2 on a d6 die. And it's a 6. The combat will begin, and Second Lieutenant Joseph Bongartz is staring death in the face. René Fonck outweighs us in every department, so we'll be doing everything we can to escape the clutches of this French ace. We'll use our advanced maneuver, a Cuban 8, to hopefully gain position on the Frenchman, giving us an advantage and a greater opportunity to flee. Fonck will get the chance to shoot, however. Hopefully, with 3 firepower, he won't cause much damage. We draw a card for the French ace, and the card indicates 3 hits to our Albatross. Fonck has the gunnery skill, which adds another random hit, for a total of 4. But we have performed a Cuban 8 maneuver, which removes 1 hit, bringing the total down to 3 hits once again. We also improve 1 position and are now advantaged over the SPAD. Precision means that if the card drawn is an even-numbered card, no ammo is expended. The card number is 45, an odd number, so the SPAD uses 1 point of ammo. The starboard struts and landing gear are hit, with the 3rd hit having no effect. With combat ended, we determine initiative for the next round. The SPAD has a speed of 11 and an agility of 1. Our Albatross has a speed of 10 and an agility of 2. So, both scouts are tied at 12. We roll 1 die for each scout. The SPAD rolls a 5 and the Albatross a 3, a difference of 2. And there is no change in position. Now we'll attempt to escape from this encounter a second time. Since we're advantaged, our odds are slightly better. We'll need to roll a 1, 2, 3, or 4 to successfully break off. Thankfully, we roll a 2 and manage to escape the encounter with the French ace. Second Lieutenant Bongartz is thoroughly shaken up after this latest encounter and decides to return to his airfield. This means the mission is a failure and receives no credit, but decides not to risk running the gauntlet of anti-aircraft fire that would surely be awaiting him in no man's land. We move to the takeoff space and roll for an encounter. It's a 9, and thankfully, no encounter takes place. Now we perform a weather check over our airfield. We roll a 5, and the weather is good. The Albatross's landing gear is damaged, so we add a +1 modifier to the final landing die roll. We roll on the B7 landing chart, and it's a 4, modified to 5, which is a safe landing. Now we perform post-mission duties. Since we did not arrive over no man's land, the mission is a failure. We gain no credit for the sortie, and thus no experience points. However, we did manage to down a French Nieuport 23. As a result of our aerial victory, we are awarded the Iron Cross 2nd Class, which gives us a prestige point. Also awarded for our first victory is the Ehrenbecher, or Honor Goblet, which grants us another prestige point. We also gain 1 fatigue point. Our Albatross only took 2 hits, which is quickly repaired, and we're ready for the next sortie. We make note of our aerial victory, and we're ready for our next mission. It was an auspicious start for 2nd Lieutenant Bongartz. He scored his first victory over friendly territory, not far from his home airfield. But he almost met an immediate end when he later encountered French ace René Fonck. The Frenchman scored a few hits on the Albatross, but Bongartz managed to outmaneuver the ace and live to tell the tale. Though he failed to complete his ground attack mission, Bongartz did score a victory and is simply glad to be alive. His first contact patrol was an eye-opening experience, and several shots of schnapps in the officers' mess will do much to settle his nerves. Thanks for watching, and we'll see you on the next patrol. In addition to the optional chart shown in this video, there is another the player may wish to use in garnering more details regarding aircraft that have been shot down. The S5 Victory location generator is used for this purpose. In our current game, we would use the top portion since we're fighting on the Western Front. To determine the exact location of where our Nieuport 23 went down, we roll 3 d6 dice, referencing the sector in which we are fighting. In our case, that would be Verdun, so we use this row here. We roll a 14, and the Frenchman crashed in Fleury. But at the bottom of the chart, we can go into further detail still, determining the distance and direction. This is done by simply rolling 2 d6 dice, 1 for the column and 1 for the row. We roll a 2 for the column and a 3 for the row. This means the Nieuport 23 we shot down finally fell in the northern section of Fleury.